I'm Chris Godwin from Tallahassee, Florida, Quincy, Florida, Gadsden County area. And I know Stacy through music venue stuff from his band. And I was invited out because I'm a local celebrity. And it was a celebrity find Bigfoot or celebrity Bigfooting. And we were shooting a Sizzler reel with the guy that created Jersey Shore. For a series that we were going to pitch to A&E. They were going to pitch it to A&E. And so we went out to a spot in Gadsden County that has known activity that show finding Bigfoot. Actually filmed some stuff there. And so I was willing to go because I was interested. I saw that, and I'm from Gadsden County, so it really interested me. And we headed out. It was probably August 1st, 2014 area. And it was a new moon, so it was pitch black, really hot. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face type of night, you know? And we got there and we went and set up in a field where all the trees had been cleared out and pushed to the edge. And we were filming down almost on like a creek bed. So we're like up here and the creek's down here. We're filming down to a salt block where deer come to feed. We were all sitting there and the girl that was with us had to pee. And we're like, yeah, you can go pee over there. So she goes and pees in the middle of this field that's cleared, you know, and we all sit there another couple minutes. And we get up, and for some reason I had a stick, and I think it was someone mentioned something about tree knocks. And I had never really experienced a tree knock, and I was skeptical of that. So like, I accidentally left the stick, just not thinking about it, in the middle of this field where we were sitting. And so we walked past from the field up to this trail, and they asked about the stick for the tree knock. And I'm like, oh crap, I left that back in that field. So we all have to hike back to the field and get this stick. And then we start walking back towards the trail, and we stop because they're like, well, let's do a little interview on why the stick is important, right? And about tree knocks. And I'm like, okay, like, you know, we can all stop and do this. And so we're stopped in this random spot, and as we're all talking, we hear this limb fall, basically kind of behind the camera guys. And, you know, I dismissed it to a owl maybe flying off where we had stopped. We disturbed it, and a limb falling out of a tree. You know, no one really thought much of it. You know, stuff falls in the woods all the time. And then while we're sitting there, another limb comes flying in, but I could hear it go across my head, like, whoosh, whoosh, you know, the thing, and it nails this tree, and it falls next to the camera guy. And I see it land next to his foot. And it was a log that had been cut on both ends from where they had pushed logs to the edge of this field. So at that moment, we realized, like, someone threw this thing at us. And so we all turned, thermal cameras, their cameras had night vision, and no one could see anyone. And this is a distance that, you know, has to be a good 70 yards maybe to the edge of the wood line, where someone would have to be behind the wood line in the thicket to not be seen. And we pick up the log and realize how heavy it is. And this thing is so heavy that, like, it's impossible to throw 20 yards, 25 yards. And I mean, I even challenged people after I saved the log that came over to my house and told them the story, and I just wanted to see how far they could throw it. And no one could ever throw it further than, you know, 25, 30 yards at all because of how bulky and heavy it was. And so, you know, our thoughts were that whoever threw this could have just ended this film by hitting the camera or hitting someone in the face within 15, 20 minutes of us being there. And it was kind of like, you know, who would do this? You know, is how I'm thinking. I'm like, oh man, these guys are like hoaxing this, like, to the point of like carelessness, right? Or something like that, if that's what's happening. And so we kind of rub it off, you know, and we're like, all right, well, let's continue on the night. And we head down the trail, and about, I don't know, another 30 minutes later, one of the guys with us asked if it would be okay to do a tree knock, you know, or like maybe we'll get some response. And he does a tree knock and, you know, we don't really hear anything, you know, and we move on a little bit. And I think we do another tree knock and don't really hear anything. And then the girl that was with us had to pee again. And so she pees on the trail, and she also said that it was that time of the month. So I don't know if that has anything to do with any of this, but it might. But she pees. And then, you know, another 15 minutes later, we're moved down the trail, and they ask if we would be okay if they did like a call to invoke a response. And I'm like, sure, you know, like I'm from this area, like what could possibly, you know, respond to a human making a sound, right? And he lets off this like grunt, and something responded. When it responded, it was almost like a dog, maybe, you know, because at first you're not used to hearing that kind of thing. And you're like, oh, well, that could have been a dog, you know? And all their faces are also like, you know, was that what that was? Like really responding? And he was like, I'll do another one. And I think he did another one, and that's when it responded again. And they handed everyone the FLIRs and said, y'all stay here, we'll run after it. And they ran after it while we all were standing there, and while they were running after it with flashlights through the woods, and we could see them with flashlights, they're making a ton of noise, and it does another grunt. I mean, you could hear like the chest cavity, and it had moved through the woods silently to a different location and made this grunt that you could hear over them running, but they didn't hear it while they were running, and it got picked up on a recorder that was in one of their backpacks while they were running, is how loud this was. In the way that it moved from one area to the other and had this chest cavity from doing like sound as an audio engineer, like I could tell it wasn't a human because of the size, but it would have had to been like speakers suspended in the trees in the middle of the woods, which is a fixed sound. So it would, you know, you would be able to go to it and find it, you know. And this thing disappeared after that third grunt. And that grunt was like a, don't come near me, what are you doing? Like you could almost feel the energy from it. And while we were standing there, one of the people with the thermal camera said they saw something dart across the trail that was the opposite direction of where the guys had ran towards this sound. And when they got back, we told them like, hey, while y'all were running, it made another grunt. And you know, they didn't hear it. And so we pulled out the recorder because he realized that he was recording. And when he pulled it out, you could actually hear it. And you know, everything goes silent the rest of the night. Things really died down, you know, and we all were hiking back to the parking lot. And I was staying in the back of the group. So I'm on the back of the group, just kind of tailing, just to see, you know. And while we're going across this area where there's no water, I heard a duck, like a quack. And I'm like, well, that was weird. We get back to the parking lot, and while we're all in the parking lot, after a couple minutes, we hear it in the woods, the animal, and it made like another sound where it was almost like a, yeah, I told you so, like, yeah, you left, you know, like, I intimidated you, like that was the feeling we got from it. And so I get home later, because I'm like, okay, that was a sound I've never heard in the woods in Gadsden County, and my family owned about 35 acres on the edge of a swamp next to some airport land where, I mean, I was there from 4 years old to 23 years old all the time. Never heard anything like this. And I'm like, there's got to be another sound somewhere online to to be similar to this for this to be a real thing. And I was Googling it and found one on YouTube that actually sounded similar, not the same tone, but the same kind of grunt. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, there's some truth to this. And I did a little more research and then was looking into their sounds, and then I found where they can actually mimic sounds of birds. And then I thought about that duck and how we had walked down this trail, and that duck was like, 15, 20 foot off that trail that made that sound in the middle of the night. And something told me that that was actually probably that Bigfoot making a bird sound as we were all walking by, and everyone had walked by except for the last person. And it must have been thinking it was so funny that like we were looking for it, and then we were walking right by it, and it can make a sound to just show its like dominance in the dark, kind of thing. But it was pretty crazy.